What's going on, everybody? So I want to talk to you today about the Boss ME80. If you're not familiar with the ME80, it's a multi-effects unit from Boss that delivers tons of various tones and really killer distortion on there. And speaking of distortion, this is what this video is about. I want to show you a good way how to get some really nice hard rock metal distortion out of this unit. Now, everybody has their own preference of how they like their distortion to sound. For me, I like a more warm, saturated, and really tight sounding distortion. My influence is 80s metal and hard rock, so I kind of want to develop that same sound out of this unit. And you can do it. I'm sure everybody knows that because this unit has been around for quite some time, pretty much almost a decade or so. And I'm sure a lot of you know how to use this unit. And for those of you who are looking into this unit, this is a little bit of insight on how you can develop some cool tones. And I'm going to walk you through the way I set up my tone and what sections of the processor that I use and how I set my knobs and everything. So I'm going to take you through a little bit of a walkthrough. I'm going to show you how I like my distortion to sound. So let's get to it. Okay, so here now we have a completely clean bank that I haven't really made any settings for. I have settings that I did for banks 1 and 2. So now here we just have a clean slate. First and foremost, you want to keep it on manual mode right here. So that way you have everything at your disposal and you can pick and choose what you want to turn on, what you want to turn off, tweak your knobs any which way to your preference. Okay, so now the first thing we got to do obviously is choose an amp. So you want to turn your amp setting on. In this section right here, this is your preamp. Over here, you have your selection of different preamp settings. You got your stack, your drive, lead, combo, crunch, tweed, and clean. And over to the right, you have your metal, and then AC, which I guess it's acoustic simulation, but we want to go for a hard rock, heavy metal, distortion type of tone. Personally, I like to set it to the drive. The drive, I think, has the best sounding distortion out of all of them. This is what it sounds like with just the preamp. So you see, we're already going in the right direction. I already like the tones. I already like the EQ setup to where it's at, but we can make this a little better. Let's see, the mids I think I like them where they are because I like a good mid-range type of sound. You know, keep it nice and gives a nice warm tone to it. And I like my tone to be semi-bright, so which is why I have the treble up a little bit. Mid-range kind of stays between 12 and 1 o'clock, and I got the treble around the same mark. The bass can stay pretty much, we'll keep it at noon. You don't want to push too much bass with your distortion tone because remember, you do have the amp that it's plugged into, so you can add more bass through the preamp section of your amplifier. But in this case, I'm just going to keep the bass no farther than 12 noon because I don't want to go too far down to 9 o'clock or below because, you know, you don't want it to sound thin. So you want to give it a little bit of weight, a little bit of muscle to the sound. So that's why I keep it at 12 noon. So, okay, so now over here is the gain. If I turn the gain up, it gets more saturated. The gain's a little bit more saturated, but it does sound a little bit muddy. So what we need to do is kind of bring up those low mids, and that would be your ODDS section. This is your overdrive distortion section. This is another option to choose distortion if you want to keep a lesser high gain selection in your preamp and run all your high gain through the ODDS section. In this case, I like rather just using the overdrive to boost up more of those low mids and just add a little bit more tightness and saturation. So what we want to do is turn on the overdrive section right here. So, and Again, you have your different selections, your distortion, turbo, OD. You got your blues, which is your blues breaker, you know, being that it's Boss. T-Scream, obviously we all know that is. It's the tube screamer. The overdrive, boost, turbo, distortion, and then you got your metal DS. I guess that's kind of like your metal zone, and then your metal core, and then your fuzz. I like using the tube screamer because when I was using analog pedals, I was either using a tube screamer or a super overdrive. And I'm assuming the overdrive would kind of be the equivalent to the super overdrive. But I think the tube screamer seems to work best with what we're going to be doing here. Now, I didn't push the drive knob up too far because I just wanted to boost a little bit of those mid-range tones and add a little bit more saturation. So now it sounds like this. Now I find that's maybe a little bit too oversaturated, so what I'll do is go to the preamp and turn the gain knob past 12 noon, keep it around 10 or 11, you know, which I think that's enough gain while this is pushing more gain. So now we have this. Now you can set your EQ preference the way you want it. Same with your overdrive. You can bring your tone back, maybe bring the level down, turn the level up here in your preamp. You know, however you want to do it. I kind of keep the level here at noon, and then I just pretty much adjust the volume on the preamp. Now we could stop there and add some delay or some reverb, but what I like to do is actually give it a little bit more boost. I can add more boost through the overdrive right here, but I find this adding the boost through the EQ/effects too seems to pretty much fill it out nicely, I think. And this is what I have right here. So if we turn the EQ/FX2 on, which would be right here where it says bank EQ, I got that on right here. Make sure it's selected to boost. And these are your gain knobs for your boost. So I could, all the way down, you see that it cut off the saturation. The more I turn it up, it's adding more saturation. Same with here. And here too. So now we have, with the preamp and with the tube screamer selected in the overdrive section, and then adding a little bit more of that boost, now we have this. Now let's add a little bit of icing on the cake. Let's go over to delay. I mean, you can pick your delay in the EQ effects too, but we already have the boost selected on here. So we're just going to move over to the actual delay section over there to the right. Now we got to hit the delay option, which is number 4 right here. So I like to keep it on a tape delay. And then I have my settings right here. Make sure the time calibration for the delay is, you know, pretty wide because you don't want it to sound more vibrato. You want it to give it a little bit of the feedback too, because you want it to carry out a little bit. And of course the volumes, just so you can hear that effect. And then lastly, I'll just add a touch of reverb. I see the reverb has already been engaged, so, but I didn't want a lot of reverb, so I choose the spring reverb right here, but I keep it on the very minimum because the delay pretty much takes care of the rest. Now when it's all said and done, you want to hit the right button and save it. When you hit the right button, you're going to see where the light's blinking. That's going to indicate which pedal it's actually going to be assigned to. So you want to select your pedal first before you hit the right button again. Let's set it to 2, and then we'll hit the right button one more time. So it's blinking rapidly, and now it's saved in 2. If I go to 1, it's more clean, right? Now if I go to 2, so there you go. That is my personal configuration. To me, I think that just delivers the most killer distortion that the ME80 really has to offer. I mean, obviously everyone's gonna have their own preference, but I just wanted to share my own personal configuration, and maybe it's something you'd like too. But just keep in mind, depending on what guitar you're using and what amp you're plugging into, it's going to not sound like the other, so you're just going to have to adjust accordingly. I hope you enjoyed this video. Well, I want to thank everyone for watching. I'm going to be making more videos in the future. Until then, I'll see you later.